So in the first episode here at Ellis Island, we examined the early days of immigration here at Ellis Island, as well as the initial rise of anti-immigration sentiment. So this is something you do see in a lot of old photos. It says here that when immigrants first disembarked here at Ellis Island, they were so weighed down with whatever it is that, they could carry as far as these bundles, because it's their possessions. It's all that they have. And in order to keep their health certificates handy, they would just in their mouth with their teeth. So all these chalk markings all meant something. For example, the X was a suspected mental defect, C was conjunctivitis, B was back, CT was trachoma, E for eyes, H for heart, P was physical and legs, PG was pregnancy, and SC was a scalp. So about 10% of the people that arrived here at Ellis Island were held for a legal hearing. Those that were thought to be either likely to become public charges or suspected of being contract laborers would receive a yellow card that would be marked SI, which meant special inquiry. And they would have 3 of these legal boards going all day long, just in and out of sessions. And during the busy seasons, a 4th legal board would be added, and each board would on average hold 50 to 100 hearings daily. So this is interesting, actually. This right here just talks about how some interpreters would end up being really, kind-hearted people and would sometimes slightly embellish whatever the immigrant's answer was, so it would jog a little bit better with a good government response. A woman gave the answer that they wanted to hear, and the government really never checked on it, and she was able to welcome to the U.S. Here in the Great Hall, this is what the Great Hall would have looked like at the time of the peak years in Ellis Island with all the fencing around. So it was pretty hard to get out of line if you're an immigrant. I can't imagine how loud the Great Hall must have been, as well as I can't imagine how many different languages you would hear. So this great little picture here is actually what Ellis Island was used, this main Great Hall was used for during World War I. It was actually used as a recovery ward for troops that were wounded and were on their way home. Wow, so this is a cool shot. This is from 1971, and this is the Great Hall during its abandonment after the closing of Ellis Island in 1954. This is only a mere fraction of one of the dorm rooms here on the second floor at Ellis Island. Both sides on the lengthwise would actually be one massive dorm room. And you can see these triple-tiered bunk beds that they had. They would pretty much 98% of the time, these dorm rooms would be filled to capacity, which was 300 people. So this is a really interesting graphic. During the peak years here at Ellis Island, approximately 9 million people came from northwestern Europe. A little over 8 million people came from Eastern Europe, and 5.3 million came from Southern Europe. Interesting graphic, interesting numbers. This here is a picture of one of the public executions of Armenians that took place in Ottoman Turkey during 1915-1916. By 1924, nearly 100,000 Armenians had come to the U.S., as well as over 1 million Armenians had lost their lives. So my German pronunciation is not great, so I'm not going to attempt to speak that, but it translates into urgent warning to immigrating girls. So it's interesting that Germany would also be trying to dissuade people to leave Germany to immigrate to not only the U.S., but just about anywhere. Interesting. Now, a ship manifest log would contain obviously the passenger's name, but also their answers to a 29-question form that would be filled out by them at the departing port. The same questionnaire document would be used at Ellis Island when the passenger would undergo a legal cross-examination. The overwhelming majority of immigrants that were coming here were what was called steerage. These people were often poor and jammed into unsanitary conditions, deep into the ships, most of the time suffering from seasickness and rough ocean conditions crossing the Atlantic. So obviously in the beginning, air travel wasn't even a thing yet, and in the later years it wasn't exactly feasible. So they all had to come across vast expanses of the ocean, and the steamship companies that were heavily used and to be able to make it all happen was White Star, Red Star, Cunard, and Hamburg and America Lines. So this is a really cool graphic of, it says alien arrivals of 1903. And And it just goes to show you how many immigrants flowed through New York City as their gateway to America, because it does break down the numbers of other U.S. locations where we would, I guess, in-process immigrants. You see Boston up there, Baltimore. So these are actually all different kinds of examples from essentially different parts of the world of what look to be baby booties. It's a small exhibit here in the museum, but it's a crazy example of just how many pamphlets there were at this time of different steamship lines, different railroad lines, with maps, how to navigate once you come into the U.S. or how to get to the U.S. or so really cool. You get to see what different companies were doing for pamphlets and how they would try to catch people's eye. On the next and final episode of my time here at Ellis Island, we're going to be taking a look at the closing door of the U.S. immigration, as well as the end of a kind of an open door policy, as well as what happened to the immigrants when they first came to the U.S. After they leave Ellis Island, where do they go? What do they do for work? And their living conditions. All coming up on next week's episode. And I'll see you guys next week at the same time, same day, same channel.